Clara Whitmore pressed her palm against the boy's forehead one last time. Still breathing, still alive. She had saved him. Now she had to leave him. The letter she placed on the kitchen table held 3 words. Forget me, please. Outside, the Wyoming wind screamed like a woman in labor. Snow fell thick as ash, and Clara Whitmore walked into that white darkness alone because staying meant destroying the only family foolish enough to love her. She did not know that Elijah Cole would wake before dawn. Did not know he would read her letter, saddle his horse, and ride straight into hell to find her. If you want to see if he catches her, subscribe to our channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The scream cut through the afternoon like a knife through butter. Clara Whitmore had just stepped off the Union Pacific train in Elkhorn Springs, Wyoming Territory, her single carpet bag clutched against her chest when she heard it. A child's scream. High and sharp, and full of the kind of pain that makes mothers run. She was running before she knew why. Her boots hit the wooden platform, then the frozen mud of Main Street. People were gathering near the livery stable, forming a circle, the way people do when something terrible happens, and nobody knows what to do about it. "Move," Clara said. "Move." She pushed through bodies. Ranchers, cowboys, women in wool coats. They parted for her without knowing why, something in her voice commanding obedience. Then she saw the boy. He lay crumpled in the dirt, maybe 9 years old. His leg twisted at an angle that made Clara's stomach clench. Blood soaked through his trousers. A bay horse stamped and snorted nearby, held by a Mexican cowboy who looked like he might be sick. "Samuel!" A man dropped to his knees beside the boy. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair streaked with early gray. His hands hovered over his son's body, trembling, afraid to touch. "Samuel, can you hear me?" The boy's eyes were open, but seeing nothing. Shock. Clara recognized it instantly. "Sir?" She knelt on the other side of the child. "Sir, I need you to look at me." The man's head snapped up. Gray eyes wild with fear. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who can help. Is there a doctor in this town?" "Doc Morrison rode out to the Hendricks Ranch this morning. Won't be back till tomorrow." "Then I'm what you've got." Clara was already examining the leg, her fingers gentle but certain. Compound fracture. Tibia. The bone hadn't broken through the skin, thank God, but it was close. "What happened?" "Horse spooked." The Mexican cowboy spoke up, his voice shaking. "Threw him into the fence post. I tried to catch him, Mr. Cole. I swear I tried." "Not now, Dusty." The man Cole hadn't taken his eyes off Clara. "You a nurse?" "Close enough. I need to set this leg before the swelling gets worse. Do you have a wagon?" "I got a buckboard." "Get blankets, clean cloth if you have it, and whiskey." "For the pain. For cleaning the wound." Clara looked up at him, and something passed between them. Trust, maybe, or desperation wearing trust's face. "I won't lie to you, Mr. Cole. This is bad. But I've seen worse, and those children lived. Your boy can live too if you let me help." Elijah Cole stared at her for 3 heartbeats. This stranger woman with tired eyes and capable hands appearing out of nowhere, like an answer to a prayer he hadn't known he was praying. "Dusty," he said. "Get the wagon, now." The ride to the Cole Ranch took 20 minutes. The longest 20 minutes of Elijah's life. He sat in the back of the buckboard, his son's head in his lap, while the stranger woman kept pressure on Samuel's leg. Every bump in the road made the boy whimper. Every whimper made Elijah die a little inside. "Talk to him," the woman said. "Keep him with us." "I don't know what to say." "Tell him a story. Tell him about his mother. Tell him anything." Elijah swallowed hard. "Sam. Sammy, you hear me? Remember that foal you helped birth last spring? The one with the white star on her forehead? She's getting big now. Real big. You're gonna ride her come summer. We'll race her against Dusty's roan, and I bet you'll win." Samuel's eyes flickered. "Papa." "I'm here, son. I'm right here." "It hurts, Papa." I know it does. but this lady's gonna fix you up all right. You just hold on." Clara watched the father cradle his child, watched the love and terror warring on his weathered face, and something cracked open in her chest, something she had spent 2 years trying to keep sealed shut. "Stop it," she told herself. "You save the boy, you get back on the train, you keep moving west." That was the plan. That had always been the plan. The ranch house was small, but solid built to withstand Wyoming winters. Clara noted the neat fencing, the well-maintained barn, the flower boxes on the windows that were empty now, but had clearly held blooms in warmer months. A woman had lived here once. A woman who cared about beauty. "Kitchen table," Clara ordered as they carried Samuel inside. "Clear it off. Dusty, I need more light. Every lamp you can find." They laid the boy down and Clara went to work. She had done this before more times than she could count. In field hospitals during the typhoid outbreak. In mining camps where men lost limbs to careless accidents. In farmhouses where mothers labored for days and babies came out wrong. Her hands knew what to do. Her mind focused down to a single point, the broken bone, the torn flesh, the child's shallow breathing. Everything else fell away. The grief she carried, the guilt, the running. "Hold him," she told Elijah. "This part will hurt." She set the bone. Samuel screamed, then went limp, unconscious. Better that way. Clara worked for 2 hours, cleaning, stitching, splinting. Her back ached. Her eyes burned. But she did not stop until the leg was wrapped tight and clean, until the bleeding had stopped, until Samuel's breathing had evened into something like sleep. When she finally stepped back, her hands were shaking. Elijah Cole stood in the corner of his own kitchen, watching her like she was something holy. Something he didn't quite believe was real. "He'll live." His voice cracked on the word. "If infection doesn't set in, yes. The next 3 days are critical. Keep the wound clean. Keep him still. If he develops a fever, send for me immediately." "Send for you where?" Clara hesitated. The question she'd been dreading. "I'll be at the boarding house in town, just for tonight. My train leaves tomorrow morning." "You're leaving?" "I was never staying, Mr. Cole. I was just passing through." Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or just exhaustion. "Then I owe you a debt I can't repay." "You don't owe me anything. I owe you my son's life." Clara looked at the boy on the table, still unconscious, his face pale but peaceful. She thought of another child, another table, another night, when her hands had worked desperately, and it hadn't been enough. When the baby came out blue and silent, and nothing she did could make it breathe. "Just keep him alive," she said quietly. "That's all the payment I need." She turned toward the door. "Wait." Elijah moved toward her, and for the first time Clara saw him clearly. Not just a panicked father, but a man. A tired man. A lonely man. A man who had been carrying something heavy for a long time. "At least stay for supper. You must be exhausted. You can't have eaten since you got off that train." "I couldn't impose." "Ma'am, you just spent 2 hours putting my boy back together. Supper ain't an imposition. It's the bare minimum of human decency." Clara should have said no. Should have walked out that door and never looked back. But her stomach was empty, and her legs were weak, and something in this man's gray eyes made her want to stay. Just for a little while. Just long enough to pretend she was the kind of woman who got to sit at kitchen tables with kind men and sleeping children. "All right," she said. "Just supper." Dusty cooked because Elijah admitted his cooking would probably finish off what the horse had started. It was simple fair beans, bacon cornbread. But Clara ate like she hadn't tasted food in days. She hadn't. Not really. Eating had become something she did to survive, not something she enjoyed. But sitting in this warm kitchen with the fire crackling, and the boy sleeping peacefully, and Elijah Cole watching her with those careful gray eyes, she found herself actually tasting the food. Actually feeling something like comfort. "You got a name." Elijah asked. Or should I just keep calling you ma'am? Clara. Clara Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore. Widow. The word came out flat. Practiced. My husband passed 2 years ago. I'm sorry. Are you... He blinked at the sharpness in her voice. I lost my wife 4 years back. So yeah, I'm sorry. I know what it costs. Clara felt the fight drain out of her. I apologize. That was rude. It was honest. I prefer honest. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound Samuel's steady breathing and the wind picking up outside. The boy's mother, Clara said carefully. How did she pass? Elijah's jaw tightened. Childbirth. Second baby. Neither of them made it. I'm sorry. You got nothing to be sorry for. But Clara did. She had everything to be sorry for, because 2 years ago in a town 300 miles east of here, she had failed to save a woman in childbirth too, and that woman's family had never forgiven her. Storm's coming. Elijah stood and walked to the window. A bad one by the look of it. You won't make it back to town tonight. I have to try. My train... Your train will still be there tomorrow. The storm won't last forever. He turned to face her. I got a spare room. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and it's dry. Stay the night. Check on Samuel in the morning. Then go catch your train. Every instinct screamed at Clara to refuse, to walk out into that storm and take her chances, to keep running the way she'd been running for 2 years. But Samuel stirred on the table, murmured something in his sleep, and Clara's resolve crumbled. One night, she said. Just one. The storm hit hard around midnight. Clara lay in the narrow bed in Elijah Cole's spare room, listening to the wind howl against the walls, and tried to remember the last time she had felt safe. It had been a while. A long while. Since Daniel died. Since the Wades had blamed her, cursed her, thrown her out of the only home she'd known. Since she had started running and never stopped. She thought about the boy in the next room, Samuel. 9 years old, motherless, nearly killed by a spooked horse. She had seen the way Elijah looked at him, the fierce protective love that burned in those gray eyes. She had seen the fear too, the knowledge that everything could be taken away in an instant. She understood that fear. She lived with it every day. Around 2 a.m, she heard movement. Footsteps in the hall. She rose, pulled her shawl around her shoulders, and crept to Samuel's room. Elijah was there, sitting in a chair beside his son's bed, watching the boy sleep. He didn't look up when Clara appeared in the doorway. Couldn't sleep, he said quietly. Kept thinking about what could have happened. But it didn't happen. He's alive. Because you were there. He finally looked at her, and in the lamplight, his face was stripped bare. No defenses, no walls. Just a father who had almost lost everything. Why were you there, Clara Whitmore? What brought you to Elkhorn Springs on that particular train, at that particular moment? Clara leaned against the doorframe. Chance. I don't believe in chance. What do you believe in? Providence. The idea that things happen for a reason, even when we can't see it. He looked back at his son. My wife used to say that. Every time something went wrong, she'd say, "There's a reason, Eli. We just have to trust." I stopped believing it when she died. But today, watching you save my boy... He trailed off. I'm not Providence, Mr. Cole. I'm just a woman with some medical training who happened to be in the right place. Maybe that's what Providence looks like. Clara didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because if Providence was real, then it had a cruel sense of humor. Sending her here to this house, to this man and his son, when she knew she couldn't stay. When staying would only bring them pain. You should sleep, she said finally. I'll watch him for a while. You don't have to do that. I know. She moved into the room, settled into the chair across from his. But I want to. They sat together through the night, two strangers bound by a sleeping child and a storm that wouldn't stop. And when dawn finally broke gray and cold and thick with snow, Clara realized with a sinking feeling that the trains wouldn't be running today, or tomorrow, or possibly for weeks. The blizzard had trapped her in Elkhorn Springs in this house, with this man and his motherless son. And Clara Whitmore, who had spent 2 years running from everything she loved, suddenly had nowhere left to run. The first week passed in a blur of nursing and worry. Samuel's fever came on the third day, just as Clara had feared. She stayed by his bedside for 36 hours straight, cooling his forehead with damp cloths, forcing broth between his cracked lips, praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Elijah brought her coffee without being asked, brought her food she forgot to eat, brought blankets when she fell asleep in the chair, and draped them over her shoulders without waking her. He didn't ask questions, didn't push for answers, just existed beside her, steady and solid, like the mountains that surrounded his ranch. On the 5th day, Samuel's fever broke. Clara wept. She didn't mean to, didn't want to, but when the boy opened his eyes and said, "Papa," in a voice rusty from disuse, something inside her shattered, and the tears came whether she wanted them or not. Elijah found her on the porch, crying into her hands as the snow fell soft and silent around her. "He's asking for you," Elijah said. Clara wiped her face. "He doesn't even know me." "He knows you saved his life. That's enough for a 9-year-old. I should go. The storm's clearing. I can make it to town." "And then what? The trains are still snowed in. You'd just be sitting in a boarding house alone instead of sitting here where there's food and warmth and a boy who wants to thank you." "Mr. Cole." "Elijah. After everything, I think you can call me Elijah." Clara looked at him. This man who had shown her nothing but kindness when she deserved nothing of the sort. "Why are you doing this? Why are you so determined to keep me here?" "Because my son almost died and you saved him." He stepped closer, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Because I haven't seen him smile in 4 years, and yesterday he smiled at you. Because you look at me like you're expecting me to throw you out at any moment, and I want to know why. I want to know what happened to you, Clara Whitmore, that made you so convinced you don't deserve kindness." Clara felt the words building in her chest, the confession she had never spoken to anyone. The truth about Daniel, about the baby, about the Wades and their accusations, and the night she had fled with nothing but a carpetbag and her shame. But the words wouldn't come. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "I'm not a good person," she said instead. "You should know that." "I don't believe you." "You don't know me." "Then stay." His voice was low, urgent. "Stay until the trains run again. Let me get to know you. Let Samuel get to know you. And if at the end of it you still think you need to run, I won't stop you." Clara searched his face for the lie, the hidden agenda, the cruelty that always came eventually. She found nothing but sincerity, and that terrified her more than anything. "All right," she heard herself say. "Until the trains run again." Elijah smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it transformed his face. Made him look younger. Made him look hopeful. Clara turned away before he could see the answering hope in her own eyes. The days settled into a rhythm. Clara tended to Samuel's leg-changing bandages, checking for infection, helping him with the exercises that would keep his muscles from weakening. The boy was a good patient, cheerful, despite the pain, full of questions about everything. "Where did you learn to fix people?" he asked one afternoon. "My husband was a doctor. He taught me." "Where is he now?" "He died. Sickness took him." Samuel considered this with the gravity of a child who had lost his mother young. "Do you miss him?" Clara thought about Daniel, his kind eyes, his gentle hands, the way he had looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Every day," she said honestly. "I miss my mama too. Papa doesn't talk about her much, but I know he misses her. Sometimes I hear him at night talking to her picture." Clara's heart clenched. "What do you remember about her?" "She smelled like flowers, and she used to sing when she did the dishes. Papa says I have her eyes." Samuel looked up at Clara, his expression earnest. "You're nice like her. Not the same, but nice." Clara didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing, just squeezed his hand and continued wrapping his leg. Later that night, she found Elijah in the barn brushing down the horses. He looked up when she entered, his hands still moving in long, soothing strokes. "Samuel told me about his mother," Clara said. "He said she smelled like flowers." Elijah's hands stilled. "Rosewater. She put it in her bath." "He misses her." "We both do." Clara moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. "What was her name?" "Margaret. Maggie to me." He set down the brush and turned to face her. "She was the best thing that ever happened to me, and losing her was the worst." "How do you survive that? Losing someone you love that much?" "You don't. Not really. You just learn to live around the empty space they left behind." He studied her face in the lantern light. "You're not just grieving your husband, are you? There's something else. Something you're running from." Clara felt the walls she had built begin to crumble. This man saw too much, asked too much, made her want to tell the truth when lies were so much safer. "Elijah." A knock at the barn door cut her off. Dusty stood in the entrance, snow melting in his dark hair, his expression troubled. "Boss, there's a man at the house. Rode in just now half frozen. Says he's looking for someone." "Looking for who?" Dusty's eyes flicked to Clara, then back to Elijah. "A woman named Clara Whitmore." The blood drained from Clara's face. She knew even before she asked, even before she walked to the house and saw the man standing in Elijah's kitchen, shaking snow from his expensive coat and looking at her with eyes full of cold fury. Marcus Wade had found her. "Hello, Clara." Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Did you really think you could run forever?" Clara's hands went cold. Her feet rooted to the wooden floor like they had grown there, like she could not move them if her life depended on it. Marcus Wade stood in Elijah Cole's kitchen, melting snow pooling beneath his expensive boots, his dark eyes fixed on her with the patience of a man who had been waiting a long time for this moment. 2 years. Marcus pulled off his gloves, one finger at a time. 2 years I've been looking for you, Clara. Do you have any idea how much money I've spent? How many towns I've searched?" Clara found her voice. It came out thin, barely a whisper. "How did you find me?" "A telegram from the general store. Someone mentioned a woman matching your description arrived on the afternoon train. A woman with medical skills who saved a local boy." He smiled that cold smile again. "You always did have a weakness for sick children." Elijah stepped forward, positioning himself between Clara and Marcus. "I don't know who you are, mister, but you're in my house. You want to explain what business you got with Mrs. Whitmore." Marcus looked at Elijah like he was examining a horse he might purchase. "Mrs. Whitmore, is that what she's calling herself now?" He laughed a short, ugly sound. "My name is Marcus Wade. Clara here was married to my brother Daniel, and she killed him." The words hit the room like a gunshot. Dusty sucked in a breath. Elijah's shoulders went rigid, and Clara felt something inside her crack open, spilling poison she had tried so hard to contain. "That's a lie," she said, but her voice shook. "Is it?" Marcus moved closer, and Elijah moved with him, keeping that protective distance. "My brother got sick. Typhoid fever. He was a doctor, but he couldn't treat himself. So he relied on his wife, his trained assistant, to care for him." Marcus's voice dropped to something vicious. "And she let him die." "I didn't let him die. I tried everything." "You tried nothing. You sat there and watched him suffer, and when he was gone you tried to steal his estate, our family's money, our family's legacy." "That's not true." Clara's voice rose desperate. "Daniel left everything to me. It was his will, his choice. His choice made while he was fevered and dying with you whispering in his ear." Marcus turned to Elijah, spreading his hands in a gesture of false reasonableness. "Mr. Cole, I understand you feel grateful to this woman. She saved your son. But you need to know who you've invited into your home. Clara Whitmore is a thief, a manipulator, and quite possibly a murderer. I have documents proving her fraud. I have witnesses who will testify to her character." "What witnesses?" Clara demanded. "Our mother, for one. The household staff. The neighbors who heard you fighting with Daniel in the weeks before he died." Marcus smiled. "Did you think people didn't notice, Clara? Did you think no one saw what you really were?" Elijah hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. Clara could not bring herself to look at his face to see the doubt that must be growing there. "Mr. Cole." Marcus's tone shifted to something almost friendly. "I'm not asking you to throw her out into the snow. I'm a reasonable man. All I want is what's rightfully mine. Clara has something that belongs to my family, and I intend to take it back." "What does she have?" "Documents. Papers Daniel signed before he died, transferring certain properties and accounts. Those documents are fraudulent, obtained under duress. I want them returned." Clara's hand went involuntarily to the pocket of her dress, where a small leather wallet rested against her hip. Daniel's last gift to her. His last protection. "I don't have anything that belongs to you," she said. "Liar." Marcus's mask of civility slipped. "You've always been a liar, a scheming, conniving—" "That's enough." Elijah's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. Quiet, but with an edge that made Marcus stop mid-sentence. "I've heard your piece. Now I want to hear hers." Marcus blinked. "Excuse me. You rode into my home uninvited. You accused a guest under my roof of murder and theft. The least you can do is let her speak." Elijah turned to Clara, and his gray eyes were unreadable. "Mrs. Whitmore, is any of what this man says true?" Clara felt the weight of the question, the weight of 2 years of running and hiding and carrying a truth she had never been able to speak. She looked at Elijah, at this man who had shown her kindness when she expected cruelty, and she made a choice. She told the truth. "Daniel was my husband." She began, her voice steadier now. "He was a good man, a kind man. We were happy together for 3 years. When the typhoid outbreak hit our town, he worked day and night treating patients. He saved dozens of lives before he got sick himself." She paused, gathering the memories that still cut like broken glass. "When Daniel fell ill, I did everything I knew how to do. Everything he had taught me. But typhoid is cruel, Mr. Cole. It takes strong men and turns them into shadows. Daniel fought for 2 weeks and I fought with him. I barely slept. I barely ate. I prayed to God every hour to spare him." Her voice broke, but she forced herself to continue. "He died on a Tuesday morning. The sun was just coming up. His last words were my name, and yes, he had changed his will to leave everything to me. Not because I asked him to. Not because I manipulated him. Because his family had disowned him for marrying beneath his station, and he knew they would take everything if he didn't protect me." Marcus made a sound of disgust. "A pretty story." "It's the truth." Clara turned to face him, something fierce rising in her chest. "You know it's the truth, Marcus. You know your mother never accepted Daniel's marriage. You know she called me a fortune hunter from the day we met. You know she threatened to cut him off if he didn't divorce me. My mother wanted to protect her son from a scheming. Your mother wanted to control her son. And when she couldn't, she waited. She waited until he was dead, and then she came for me." Clara's hands were shaking now, but not from fear. From anger. "Do you know what your family did, Mr. Cole? Do you want to know what these reasonable people did to the widow of their own son and brother?" Elijah nodded once. "Tell me." "They came to my home 3 days after Daniel's funeral. Before I had even stopped crying. They brought a lawyer and 2 constables, and they told me I had 1 hour to gather my things and leave. They said the will was fraudulent. They said Daniel had been out of his mind when he signed it. They said if I didn't go quietly, they would have me arrested for theft and murder." Clara's voice dropped to something raw, something wounded. "I was 28 years old. I had just buried my husband. I had no family, no money of my own, no one to stand with me. So I ran. I took the documents Daniel had given me, the ones that prove the will is legitimate, and I ran. I've been running ever since." Silence filled the kitchen. The fire crackled. The wind moaned against the walls. Marcus recovered first. "A touching performance. But you expect Mr. Cole to believe that my entire family conspired against a poor innocent widow, that we invented accusations of murder out of spite." "I expect Mr. Cole to make his own judgment," Clara said quietly. "That's all I've ever asked of anyone." Elijah looked between them, his face still unreadable. Then he walked to the kitchen door and opened it. "Mr. Wade, you've said your piece. Mrs. Whitmore has said hers. Now I think it's time for you to leave." Marcus stared at him. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious. There's a boarding house in town. Mrs. Ruth Dawson runs it. She'll give you a room for the night. In the morning you can take your accusations and your documents and ride back wherever you came from. This woman is a criminal. This woman saved my son's life." Elijah's voice went hard. "She sat by his bed for 3 days and 3 nights. She wept when his fever broke. I don't know what happened between her and your family, but I know what I've seen with my own eyes. And what I've seen is a good woman with gentle hands and a broken heart." Marcus's face flushed with fury. "You're making a mistake, Cole. I came here offering a reasonable solution. I could have brought the law. I could have brought men with guns. But you didn't, because you know your case is weak. You know those documents are legitimate, and you know that if this ever goes before a real judge, you'll lose. You don't know anything about me. I know men like you." Elijah stepped closer, and for the first time, Clara saw something dangerous in him. Something that reminded her he had been a cavalry soldier once, a man who had seen blood and death and learned to deal both. "I know men who think money and name give them the right to take what they want. I've fought men like you. Some of them I buried." The two men stared at each other, and the air between them crackled with the threat of violence. Finally, Marcus looked away. "This isn't over." "It is for tonight. Dusty will show you to your horse." Marcus pulled on his gloves, his movements sharp with barely contained rage. He paused at the door and looked back at Clara. "You can't hide forever," he said. "Sooner or later, you'll have to face what you've done. And when that day comes, I'll be there." Then he was gone, swallowed by the night and the snow. Clara stood in the middle of the kitchen trembling. The strength that had carried her through the confrontation drained away, leaving her hollow and cold. "Clara." Elijah's voice was gentle now, the hardness gone. "Sit down before you fall." She let him guide her to a chair, let him pour her whiskey she didn't taste. Let him sit across from her while Dusty checked on Samuel and the house settled back into quiet. "You believe me," she said finally. It wasn't a question. "I believe you." "Why? You've known me a week. You've known him 5 minutes. How can you be sure I'm not exactly what he says I am?" Elijah leaned back in his chair, studying her with those gray eyes that saw too much. "When Samuel was sick, when his fever was at its worst, you held his hand and talked to him. You told him stories about a garden you used to tend, about flowers you planted with your husband. You cried when you thought no one was watching." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That doesn't prove anything. It proves you loved him, your husband. It proves your grief is real." Elijah shook his head. "I've seen killers, Clara. I've seen men and women who take life without remorse. You're not one of them. I'd stake my ranch on it." "You barely know me." "I know enough." The simple certainty in his voice broke something in Clara. She bent forward, her face in her hands, and wept. Elijah didn't try to comfort her with words, didn't offer empty platitudes or awkward touches. He just sat with her solid and present, while she cried out 2 years of fear and grief and loneliness. When the tears finally stopped, Clara looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "I should leave. Tonight before he comes back. I've brought trouble to your door, and you don't deserve—" "Stop." Elijah held up a hand. You're not going anywhere tonight. It's past midnight, there's a storm brewing, and you're in no condition to travel. But Marcus, we'll do nothing tonight. Men like him don't act without planning. He came here to rattle you to see what you'd do. Now he'll go back to town and think about his next move. And what will you do? Elijah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Tomorrow, I'm going to ride into town and have a conversation with Sheriff Hollister. He's a fair man. He'll want to hear both sides of this story. The law has never been on my side. Wyoming law might be different from whatever you left behind. Out here, we judge people by what they do, not what their families say about them. He stood and stretched his joints, popping. Get some sleep, Clara. We'll figure the rest out in the morning. He walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, he said quietly. I'm glad you were on that train. I'm glad you came to Elkhorn Springs. And I'm glad you're here, whatever trouble came with you. Then he was gone, and Clara sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the wind and wondering how this man she barely knew had already become the safest thing in her world. She did not sleep that night. She sat by the window in her borrowed room, watching the snow fall, thinking about Marcus and his accusations and the documents hidden in her dress pocket. Daniel's last gift. His signature on papers that proved she was his wife, his heir, his chosen one. The Wades had tried to take everything from her. They had taken her home, her reputation, her place in society. But they had not taken these papers. They had not taken the proof that Daniel had loved her, that he had wanted her to be protected. And they had not taken her spirit. Battered and bruised as it was, she still had the will to fight. She had just forgotten somewhere in the running that fighting was even an option. When dawn broke gray and cold, Clara made her decision. She would not run. Not this time. Not from Marcus Wade and his accusations, and not from whatever was growing between her and Elijah Cole. She would stay. She would face whatever came. And if the Wades wanted to destroy her, they would have to do it here in this frozen corner of Wyoming, where a widowed rancher and his motherless son had shown her what kindness looked like. She found Elijah in the barn, already saddling his horse. You're going to town, she said. Told you I would. I want to come with you. He paused, one hand on the saddle. That's not a good idea. Marcus might still be there. I know. Clara lifted her chin. I'm done running, Elijah. If Marcus wants to make accusations, let him make them to my face. Let the sheriff hear both sides and decide. Elijah studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Maggie would have liked you, he said. She always said she could tell a person's character by how they handled trouble. And how am I handling it? Like someone who's been knocked down but isn't staying down. He nodded toward a second horse. Saddle up. We'll leave as soon as Dusty gets here to watch Samuel. The ride into Elkhorn Springs took nearly an hour, the snow slowing their progress. Clara rode beside Elijah in silence, her thoughts churning, her heart beating too fast. The town was quiet when they arrived, most folks staying inside against the cold. But the boarding house showed signs of life, smoke rising from the chimney, and Clara knew Marcus was there. Watching. Waiting. Let him watch. Sheriff Tom Hollister was a lean man in his 50s with a gray mustache and eyes that had seen too much to be easily fooled. He listened to Clara's story without interrupting, his face giving nothing away. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and looked at Marcus, who had insisted on being present. Mr. Wade, you got any proof of these accusations? Legal documents, court orders, anything official? Marcus's jaw tightened. I have affidavits from family members. Affidavits from the people accusing her. That don't count for much. Hollister turned back to Clara. Mrs. Whitmore, you got those papers your husband signed? Clara pulled the leather wallet from her pocket and handed it over. The sheriff examined the documents carefully, taking his time. Looks legitimate to me, he said finally. Signed, witness, dated. I ain't a lawyer, but I know what a legal will looks like. Those signatures were obtained under duress, Marcus insisted. My brother was dying out of his mind with fever. Then you'll need to prove that in a court of law, Mr. Wade, Not in my office in Wyoming territory. Hollister stood and handed the papers back to Clara. Here's what I see. I see a widow with legal documents and a story that makes sense. And I see a man who rode 300 miles in winter to harass her. Now I can't tell you to leave town. It's a free country. But I can tell you this: if you cause any trouble for Mrs. Whitmore, if you threaten her or try to take her by force, I will arrest you. Are we clear? Marcus's face had gone red with fury. You're making a mistake, Sheriff. This woman is under the protection of the law. My law. Hollister opened his office door. Good day, Mr. Wade. For a moment, Clara thought Marcus might argue, might push, might do something stupid. But he was smarter than that. He gathered what was left of his dignity and walked out without another word. Clara let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Thank you, Sheriff, Elijah said. Don't thank me yet. Hollister's expression was grave. I can protect her in town, but I can't be everywhere. Men like Wade, they don't give up easy. They just get sneakier. I know. Watch your back, both of you. They left the sheriff's office and stepped out into the cold morning air. Clara stood on the wooden sidewalk, blinking in the pale sunlight, trying to process what had just happened. Someone had believed her. Someone with authority, with the power to do something about it. Clara? Elijah touched her elbow gently. You all right? I don't know. She laughed a strange, shaky sound. I've been running so long I don't know what it feels like to stop. Then let me show you. He took her hand right there on Main Street where anyone could see, and Clara felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been frozen for 2 years starting to thaw. Come on, he said. Let's go home. Home. The word wrapped around her like a warm blanket. She hadn't had a home in so long. But maybe, just maybe, she was finding one now. The days that followed were quiet, watchful. Marcus Wade stayed in town at the boarding house. He didn't approach Clara again, didn't send messages or make threats. But she knew he was there. Could feel his presence like a storm gathering on the horizon. Samuel's leg continued to heal. By the second week, he was sitting up in bed demanding books to read and stories to hear. Clara told him about the places she had traveled, the people she had helped, the babies she had delivered into the world. You've delivered babies. Samuel's eyes went wide. Like actual babies. Dozens of them. Was it gross? Clara laughed. Sometimes. But mostly it was wonderful. Bringing a new life into the world, seeing a mother hold her child for the first time. There's nothing else like it. Samuel was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he said, My mama died having a baby. Papa told me. Clara's heart clenched. I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. Do you think you could have saved her if you had been there? The question hit Clara like a physical blow. She thought of Margaret Cole, a woman she had never met, dying in this very house while her husband and young son watched helplessly. She thought of all the mothers she had saved and all the ones she hadn't. I don't know, she said honestly. Some births go wrong and nothing can fix them. But I would have tried. I would have tried everything. Samuel nodded, accepting this. Then he reached out and took her hand. I'm glad you're here, he said simply. Papa's happier when you're around. He doesn't talk to Mama's picture as much anymore. Clara didn't know what to say to that, so she just squeezed his hand and promised to bring him more books tomorrow. That night she found Elijah on the porch, staring out at the snow-covered fields. The sky was clear for once, stars scattered across the darkness like spilled diamonds. Samuel told me something today, Clara said, settling into the chair beside him. About Margaret, about how you talked to her picture. Elijah's shoulders tensed. He shouldn't have said that. He didn't mean anything by it. He was trying to tell me that you're happier now. Silence stretched between them. Then Elijah spoke, his voice rough. 4 years I've been talking to a photograph. 4 years of telling a dead woman about my day, about our son, about how much I miss her. I thought if I stopped, I'd be letting her go, betraying her somehow. And now I don't know. He turned to look at Clara, and in the starlight his face was open, vulnerable. You came into my life a month ago, a stranger on a train, and now I can't imagine this house without you in it. I can't imagine waking up and not seeing you at the breakfast table. I can't imagine Samuel's face if you leave. Wait, Clara's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Elijah, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know you're still grieving. I know you've got troubles I can't even imagine. I'm just telling you what's true. You've changed something in this house, in me. And I don't want to go back to what it was before. Clara stood and walked to the porch railing, her back to him. The cold air bit at her cheeks, but she barely felt it. I'm scared, she said finally. Every good thing I've ever had has been taken from me. My parents died when I was young. My husband died. My home, my reputation, my place in the world. All gone. I know what that's like. Then you know why I can't let myself hope, why I keep one foot out the door ready to run. She heard him stand, heard his boots on the wooden planks as he crossed to stand behind her. What if you didn't have to run anymore? His voice was close, warm. What if you could just stay here with us for as long as you want? And Marcus, he won't stop. You heard the sheriff. Men like him don't give up. Then we'll face him together. You and me and anyone else who stands with us. Elijah put his hands on her shoulders, turning her gently to face him. I spent 4 years protecting my son on my own. It's exhausting. It's lonely. And it's not how it's supposed to be. People are meant to stand together, Clara. To fight together. To love together. Love. The word hung between them, dangerous and beautiful. I can't promise you anything, Clara whispered. I don't know if I'm capable of that anymore. I'm not asking for promises. Elijah's hand came up to cup her cheek, his calloused palm warm against her cold skin. I'm asking for a chance. Just a chance to show you that not everything gets taken away. Some things, if you fight for them, you get to keep. Clara looked into his gray eyes, and she saw something there she had forgotten existed. Hope. Real, stubborn, foolish hope. She rose on her toes and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative. Two wounded people reaching for each other across a gulf of grief and fear. But then Elijah's arms came around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened into something fierce and true. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara rested her forehead against his chest. I'm still scared, she said. I know. He held her tighter. We'll be scared together. 3 weeks passed like a held breath. Clara woke each morning in the spare room of Elijah's ranch house, and each morning she had to remind herself this was real. The warmth of the fire, the smell of coffee, Samuel's laughter from the kitchen where Dusty was teaching him to play cards despite Elijah's protests. And Elijah himself. Always there, always watching her with those gray eyes that held something she was still afraid to name. They hadn't kissed again since that night on the porch. Hadn't spoken of what it meant or where it was leading. But something had shifted between them. A wall crumbled, and now every accidental touch felt deliberate. Every shared glance felt like a conversation. Clara was terrified, and for the first time in years, she was also happy. You're smiling again. She looked up from the bread dough she was kneading to find Samuel watching her from his chair by the fire. His leg was healing well, the splint replaced by a lighter bandage, and in a few more weeks he would be walking on his own. Am I not allowed to smile? You are. It's just new. Samuel tilted his head, studying her the way children do when they're working something out. Papa smiles more too. Dusty says it's because of you. Does Dusty say a lot of things? Dusty says you and Papa are sweet on each other. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. Dusty should mind his own business. That's what Papa said. Samuel grinned, looking so much like his father that Clara's heart clenched. But I think Dusty's right. And I don't mind. I like having you here. It feels like how things are supposed to be. Clara set down the dough and wiped her hands on her apron. She crossed to Samuel's chair and knelt beside him, taking his small hands in hers. Samuel, I need you to understand something. Whatever happens between me and your father, it doesn't change how I feel about you. You saved me as much as I saved you. Do you understand? I didn't save you. I was the one with the broken leg. You gave me a reason to stay. You and your father both. I was running from something terrible, and you gave me a place to stop. Samuel's eyes went serious, older than his 9 years. The man who came looking for you. The mean one. Is he going to take you away? I don't know. Clara wouldn't lie to him. He deserved better than lies. He wants to hurt me, but your father is protecting me, and so is the sheriff. I'm not going to let him win without a fight. Good. Samuel squeezed her hands. Because I don't want you to go. Ever. The door opened, bringing a rush of cold air, and Elijah stamping snow from his boots. He stopped when he saw Clara kneeling by Samuel's chair, something soft crossing his face. Am I interrupting? Samuel was just telling me that Dusty talks too much. Dusty's been talking too much since the day I hired him. Elijah hung his coat and crossed to the fire, warming his hands. Storm's coming. A big one by the look of the sky. We should have a few days of supplies, but I want to make a run into town before it hits. I'll go with you. Clara. I know Marcus is still there. I know it's a risk. She stood facing him. But I'm done hiding in this house like a scared rabbit. If he wants to confront me, let him do it. I won't give him the satisfaction of seeing me cower. Elijah studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. But you stay close to me. And if anything feels wrong, we leave. No arguments. No arguments. The ride into Elkhorn Springs was quiet. The sky hung low and gray-heavy with the promise of snow. Clara rode beside Elijah, their horse's breath forming clouds in the frigid air. She found herself watching his profile as they rode. The strong line of his jaw. The way he sat in the saddle, relaxed but alert. The small scar above his eyebrow that she had never asked about. You're staring, he said without looking at her. I'm observing. Is there a difference? Staring is rude. Observing is scientific. He laughed, a low, warm sound that made something flutter in Clara's chest. And what has your scientific observation concluded? That you're a good man, Elijah Cole. Better than I deserve. Now he did look at her, his gray eyes sharp. Don't say that. Don't ever say that. It's true. No. He reined his horse to a stop, and Clara stopped beside him. You deserve every good thing, Clara. You've been through hell, and you came out the other side still fighting, still caring, still capable of love. That takes strength most people don't have. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't about feeling, it's about doing. He reached across the space between them and took her hand. You stayed when everything in you was screaming to run. You faced Marcus when you could have hidden. You let yourself care about Samuel, about me, when you had every reason to keep your walls up. That's strength. Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back. When did you become so wise? 4 years of talking to a photograph. Turns out you learn a lot about yourself when the only person listening is a ghost. They rode on, hands still linked, and Clara felt something settle in her chest. Something that felt dangerously like peace. The town was busy when they arrived, people rushing to stock up before the storm. Clara followed Elijah into the general store where they loaded up on flour, sugar, coffee, and salt. She kept her eyes down, not wanting to draw attention, but she could feel the stares. Small towns talked, and everyone knew about the stranger woman living at the Cole Ranch. Let them talk. She was done caring about whispers. They were loading the supplies into the wagon when Ruth Dawson appeared, wrapped in a heavy shawl, her lined face creased with worry. Clara. Thank God I caught you. Ruth, what's wrong? The older woman glanced around, then leaned in close. It's Marcus Wade. He's been drinking at the saloon for 3 days straight, talking to anyone who'll listen about you, about what you supposedly did. He's been buying rounds, making friends. Clara's stomach turned to ice. What kind of friends? The wrong kind. Men who'll do anything for money. Ruth gripped her arm. Clara, I think he's planning something bad. Elijah stepped closer, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. Did you hear anything specific? Just bits and pieces. He mentioned waiting for the right moment, mentioned the storm. Ruth shook her head. I don't trust it, Elijah. He's got the look of a man who's done waiting. Clara and Elijah exchanged glances, the same fear reflected in both their eyes. We need to get back to the ranch, Elijah said. Now, before the storm hits. Go. Ruth pressed something into Clara's hand, a small Derringer pistol barely bigger than her palm. My late husband's. I want you to have it. Ruth, I can't. You can and you will. I've seen too many women hurt by men like Marcus Wade. I won't see another. She cupped Clara's face in her weathered hands. You fight, child. Whatever comes, you fight. Clara hugged her hard, then climbed into the wagon beside Elijah. They left town at a pace just short of dangerous, the horses sensing their urgency. They were halfway home when the first snowflakes began to fall. How bad is it going to get? Clara asked. Bad. Maybe the worst we've seen this winter. Elijah snapped the reins, urging the horses faster. If we can beat it to the ranch, we'll be fine. The house is solid. We've got enough supplies to last weeks. And if Marcus comes during the storm, then he's a bigger fool than I thought. No one travels in a Wyoming blizzard, not if they want to live. But Clara wasn't so sure. She had seen the hatred in Marcus's eyes, the obsession that burned there. He had spent 2 years hunting her, had crossed 300 miles in winter to find her. Would a storm really stop him, or would it just give him cover? They reached the ranch as the wind began to howl. Dusty met them in the yard, helping to unhitch the horses and get them into the barn. His face was grim. Saw riders on the North Ridge about an hour ago, he said quietly to Elijah. 3 of them. They didn't come closer, just watched. Then they rode off toward town. Marcus? Couldn't tell. But who else would be watching us? Elijah's jaw tightened. He turned to Clara. Get inside. Stay with Samuel. Lock the doors and don't open them for anyone but me or Dusty. Elijah? Please, Clara. His voice was strained, urgent. Let me do this. Let me protect you. She wanted to argue, wanted to stand beside him, fight beside him. But she thought of Samuel inside alone and helpless with his healing leg, and she nodded. Be careful. Always. She ran for the house. The last thing she saw before the door closed was Elijah and Dusty heading for the barn rifles in hand. The storm hit with a vengeance. Within an hour, the world outside had vanished into a wall of white. The wind screamed against the walls, shaking the windows, finding every crack and gap. Clara fed the fire until it roared piled blankets on Samuel's bed and tried not to think about Elijah out there in the cold. Is Papa going to be okay? Samuel asked, his voice small. Your Papa has survived worse than this. Clara tried to make her voice confident, reassuring. He's strong. He's strong, Samuel agreed. But he's not invincible. Mama used to tell him that all the time. She said he thought he could take on the whole world, and one day the world would fight back. Clara sat on the edge of his bed, brushing hair from his forehead. Your mother sounds like she was very wise. She was. I wish you could have met her. I wish I could have too. The door banged open and Clara's hand went to the Derringer in her pocket. But it was only Elijah, covered in snow, his face red from cold. Barn's secure, he said, stamping his boots. Horses are fed and watered. Dusty's staying out there to keep watch. In this storm, he insisted, said he's survived worse in Mexico. Elijah crossed to the fire and held his hands to the flames. We're as ready as we're going to be. Now we wait. Clara joined him by the fire. Ruth said Marcus was talking about waiting for the right moment. Do you think this is it? Maybe. A storm like this could provide cover, but it's also dangerous for him. If he gets lost out there, he dies. And if he doesn't get lost, Elijah turned to face her. His eyes were hard determined. Then he'll find us ready. I've got rifles at every window. Dusty's armed. And I know this land better than anyone. If Marcus Wade wants a fight, he'll get one. I don't want you to die for me, Elijah. I don't intend to die at all, but I'll be damned if I let anyone hurt you or Samuel. Not while I'm breathing. Clara felt the tears she had been holding back finally spill over. She had spent 2 years convinced she was alone, that no one would ever stand for her again. And now, here was this man, this stubborn, beautiful man, ready to face death itself to keep her safe. I love you, she said. The words came out before she could stop them, before she could think about whether it was too soon, or too dangerous, or too foolish. Elijah went still. Then his face transformed, the hardness melting into something soft and wondering. Say it again. I love you. I know it's crazy. I know we've only known each other a month, but I love you, Elijah Cole, and I'm tired of being afraid to say it. He crossed to her in 2 strides and kissed her. Not gently this time, but fiercely, desperately, like a man drinking water after weeks in the desert. His hands tangled in her hair. Hers gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. I love you too, he said against her lips. I've loved you since you walked into my life and saved my son. I've loved you since you cried over his fever and laughed at his jokes and stood up to Marcus Wade like you weren't afraid of anything. I was afraid. I'm still afraid. So am I. But I'm more afraid of losing you. He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. When this is over, when Marcus is gone, and the snow melts, I want to marry you. I want you to be my wife Samuel's mother, part of this family for real. Clara's heart felt too big for her chest. Elijah. You don't have to answer now. I know it's a lot to ask. I know you've been through hell, and you're not sure you can trust good things anymore. But I want you to know what I want. I want you to know that whatever happens tonight, tomorrow, next year, I'm choosing you. I'll keep choosing you. Clara kissed him again, pouring everything she couldn't say into the press of her lips. All the hope and fear and desperate love that had been building since the day she stepped off that train. A gunshot shattered the night. They broke apart, both turning toward the window. The storm still raged, but somewhere out there in the howling white darkness, someone had fired a gun. Stay here. Elijah grabbed his rifle from the wall. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it unless you hear my voice. Elijah, no. But he was already gone, disappeared into the swirling snow. Clara stood frozen for a heartbeat. Then training took over the cool efficiency she had learned from years of crisis. She locked the door, checked the windows, loaded the Derringer Ruth had given her. Clara? Samuel's voice came from the bedroom, frightened. What's happening? Stay in bed, sweetheart. Don't move. Another gunshot, then another. Then a sound that made Clara's blood run cold, a man screaming in pain. Elijah. She ran to the window, straining to see through the white. Shadows moved in the storm shapes that might have been men or might have been tricks of the wind. She couldn't tell. Couldn't see anything clearly. A crash from the back of the house. Clara spun, raising the Derringer as the kitchen door burst open. A man stumbled through, covered in snow, bleeding from a wound on his head. Not Elijah, not Dusty, Marcus Wade. He saw her and smiled, blood staining his teeth red. In his hand was a knife, long and wicked in the firelight. Hello, Clara, he said. Did you miss me? Clara's hand did not shake. She had expected it to. Had expected terror to freeze her muscles, to turn her into the helpless victim Marcus had always believed she was. But something else rose in her instead. Something cold and hard and ancient as the mountains outside. She raised the Derringer and pointed it at his chest. Stop right there. Marcus laughed, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. The wound on his head was deep, still bleeding, and he swayed on his feet. But the knife in his hand stayed steady. "You going to shoot me, Clara? You don't have the spine. Try me." He took another step. Clara's finger tightened on the trigger. I said stop. "Or what?" Marcus spread his arms wide mockingly. "You'll kill me, the way you killed Daniel. Go ahead. Prove what I've always known about you." "I didn't kill Daniel. I loved him." "Love." He spat the word like poison. "You loved his money, his name, his status. You were nothing when he found you. A midwife's assistant delivering babies for pennies. And you convinced him to marry you, to leave everything to you, and then you watched him die." "I watched him die because I couldn't save him." Clara's voice cracked, but her hand stayed steady. "I sat by his bed for 2 weeks. I prayed. I begged. I did everything I knew how to do. And when he stopped breathing, a part of me died with him." Touching story. Mother didn't believe it either. "Your mother hated me from the moment Daniel brought me home. She hated that he chose love over duty. Hated that he was happy with a woman she considered beneath him. You were beneath him. You still are." Marcus took another step, and now he was close enough that Clara could see the madness in his eyes. The obsession that had driven him across 300 miles of frozen wilderness. "But that ends tonight. I'm going to take back what you stole, and then I'm going to make sure you never steal from anyone again." "Clara." Samuel's voice came from the bedroom door. Small. Frightened. "Clara, what's happening?" Marcus's head snapped toward the sound. His smile widened. "Well, well. The crippled boy. Didn't know you had an audience. Samuel, go back to your room." Clara didn't take her eyes off Marcus. "Close the door and don't come out." "But, now Samuel." The boy hesitated, his face pale with fear. Then he retreated, the bedroom door clicking shut behind him. Marcus turned back to Clara, something new in his expression. Something calculating. "You care about that boy. I saw it in your face. And the father, too. You've been playing house, haven't you? Found yourself a new family to leech off of." "They're not my family." "No. Then why are you standing between me and that door? Why haven't you run yet?" Clara didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the truth was, she didn't know. She didn't know why she was still here, why she hadn't fled into the storm the moment she saw Marcus's face. All she knew was that Samuel was behind that door, helpless and scared, and she would die before she let Marcus touch him. "Doesn't matter." Marcus shrugged. "After tonight, none of it matters. Cole and his Mexican are bleeding out in the snow. My men took care of them. It's just you and me now, Clara. The way it was always going to end." Clara felt ice flood her veins. "You're lying." "Am I? I heard the shots, saw the bodies fall." His smile was cruel, triumphant. "Your protector is dead, Clara. There's no one left to save you." "No." The word echoed in Clara's mind, denial and grief and rage all tangled together. Not Elijah. Not the man who had ridden through hell to find her, who had stood between her and the world, who had told her he loved her just minutes ago. Not him. "I don't believe you." "Believe what you want. Won't change the truth." Marcus raised the knife. "Now, give me those documents, and maybe I'll make it quick." Clara's mind raced. The Derringer held 2 shots. Marcus was close enough that she couldn't miss. But she had seen enough gunshot wounds to know that one shot might not stop him, might not even slow him down if he was determined enough. And Marcus Wade was very, very determined. "The documents are in my room," she said, stalling. "In my bag." "Then let's go get them. Together." "You think I'm stupid enough to let you out of my sight?" He gestured with the knife. "Move. Slowly. And if you try anything, I'll make sure that boy in there dies screaming." Clara moved. She walked toward the spare room, Marcus close behind her, his breath hot on her neck. Her mind worked frantically, searching for options, for weapons, for anything that might give her an advantage. Then she remembered. The scissors. The medical scissors she had used to cut Samuel's bandages left on the dresser in her room. Sharp enough to cut through skin. Sharp enough to kill. She reached the bedroom door, her hand on the knob. Slowly, Marcus repeated. No sudden moves. She opened the door. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow from the fire in the main room. Clara moved toward the dresser, her eyes searching for the scissors, praying they were where she had left them. There, glinting in the low light. "The bag's in the bottom drawer," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Let me get it." She bent down her hand, reaching for the drawer handle. In one fluid motion, she grabbed the scissors instead, spun, and drove them toward Marcus's throat. He was faster than she expected. His arm came up, blocking her strike, the scissors slashing across his forearm instead of his neck. He howled in pain, dropping the knife, and Clara scrambled for it, her fingers closing around the handle just as Marcus's fist connected with the side of her head. The world exploded into stars. She hit the ground hard, the knife skittering away, the derringer still clutched in her hand. Marcus loomed over her, his face twisted with rage, blood dripping from his wounded arm. "You bitch! You worthless, scheming bitch!" He kicked her in the ribs. Clara gasped, curling around the pain, but she didn't drop the gun. Couldn't drop it. It was the only thing keeping her alive. "I was going to make it quick," Marcus snarled, "for Daniel's sake. But now I'm going to take my time. I'm going to make you suffer the way he suffered." He reached down, grabbed a fistful of her hair, and hauled her upright. Clara screamed as her scalp burned, as her vision swam with pain and fear. And then she heard it. A sound that cut through the howling wind, through Marcus's curses, through her own screaming pulse. A gunshot. Close. Inside the house. Marcus froze. Clara looked past him toward the bedroom door and saw Samuel standing there. Elijah's rifle in his small hands, too big for him, barely steady. Smoke rose from the barrel. Marcus looked down at his chest, at the red stain spreading across his shirt, at the hole that had appeared just below his collarbone. "You shot me," he said, sounding almost surprised. "The crippled boy shot me." He released Clara's hair and stumbled backward, his hand pressing against the wound. Blood seeped between his fingers, dark and thick. "You shot me," he said again, and this time there was wonder in his voice. Disbelief. "I came all this way, and a crippled boy?" He collapsed. Clara scrambled to her feet, ignoring the pain in her ribs, and kicked the knife away from Marcus's reaching hand. She pointed the derringer at his head, her arm steady. Now her fear burned away by something fiercer. "Samuel, are you hurt?" "No, ma'am." The boy's voice was shaking, but he hadn't dropped the rifle. "I heard the yelling. I remembered where Papa keeps the guns." "You did good. You did so good." Clara didn't take her eyes off Marcus, who was groaning on the floor, clutching his wound. "Now I need you to go find your father. Can you do that? Papa's outside. The bad man said—" "I know what he said, but I don't believe him, and neither should you. Your papa is the toughest man I've ever met. He's out there somewhere, and he needs you to find him." Samuel hesitated, looking at Marcus with wide, frightened eyes. "Samuel," Clara's voice was firm, commanding. "Look at me, not at him. At me." The boy raised his eyes. "Your papa needs you. I'll handle this. But you have to go. Now." Samuel nodded once, set down the rifle, and ran for the door. Clara waited until he was gone. Then she knelt beside Marcus, the derringer pressed against his temple. "Where are your men?" Marcus laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. "Does it matter? You're finished, Clara. Even if I die here, you'll never be free. My mother will send more men, more hunters. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Then I'll spend the rest of my life fighting." That's what Daniel would have wanted. Daniel was a fool. A sentimental fool who threw away everything for a woman who wasn't worth. Daniel was the best man I ever knew. Clara's voice was cold hard as the winter outside. "He loved me. He chose me. And nothing you say, nothing you do, will ever change that." She pressed the derringer harder against his temple. Marcus's eyes went wide. You won't do it. You don't have the... I don't have to kill you, Marcus. That bullet in your chest will do it for me if you don't get help. She stood looking down at him with something like pity. You could have let me go. Could have moved on with your life. But you chose this. You chose hate over peace. And now you're going to die in a stranger's house 1,000 miles from home. Because you couldn't accept that Daniel loved me more than he loved your family's approval. Marcus's face contorted with rage. He tried to rise to grab at her, but his body wouldn't obey. The blood loss was taking its toll. Damn you, he whispered. Damn you to hell. Maybe, but not tonight. The door burst open and Clara spun the derringer raised ready to fire. But it wasn't one of Marcus's men. It was Elijah. He stood in the doorway, covered in snow and blood, his rifle clutched in white-knuckled hands. Behind him, Samuel clung to his coat, tears streaming down his face. Clara. Elijah's voice was ragged, desperate. Clara, are you? I'm fine. She lowered the derringer, and suddenly her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. She sank to the floor as Elijah crossed the room and gathered her in his arms. I'm fine. Samuel saved me. Elijah looked at his son, something fierce and proud blazing in his eyes. He found me in the barn, told me you were in trouble. Marcus said you were dead, said his men killed you. They tried. Dusty took one down. I got the other. He pulled back, examining her face, her body looking for wounds. Did he hurt you? Nothing that won't heal. Elijah's gaze moved to Marcus, who lay groaning on the floor, the pool of blood beneath him growing larger with each passing second. He's not dead. Not yet. Samuel shot him, but the bullet went high. Elijah stood, walked to Marcus, and looked down at him with cold contempt. You came into my home, threatened my son, tried to hurt the woman I love. Marcus bared his teeth. She killed my brother. Your brother died of typhoid fever. Clara did everything she could to save him. Elijah crouched beside Marcus, his voice low and dangerous. But you don't care about that, do you? You never cared about the truth. You just wanted someone to blame. She deserves everything, and you deserve nothing. Elijah stood and turned his back on Marcus. He crossed to Clara, helped her to her feet, and held her close. Is it over? She whispered against his chest. Almost. The storm began to die around midnight. By dawn, the world outside was silent and white, the sky clear for the first time in days. Sheriff Hollister arrived mid-morning with a deputy and a doctor. They found Marcus Wade unconscious but alive. His wound bandaged with strips from Clara's own petticoat. She could have let him die. It would have been easy. Just leave him there on the floor and let the cold and blood loss finish what Samuel had started. But she wasn't a killer. Whatever Marcus believed, whatever his family had told the world, she wasn't capable of watching a man die when she had the power to save him, even a man who had tried to destroy her. He'll live, the doctor said, emerging from the spare room where Marcus lay shackled to the bed frame. The bullet didn't hit anything vital, missed the lung by an inch. Lucky man, Hollister said dryly. He turned to Clara, his expression grave. I'm going to need statements from everyone. You, Elijah, the boy, Dusty. And then I'm going to send some telegrams east. If what you've told me is true, the Wade family has been making false accusations for 2 years. That's a crime in any territory. They have money, influence. They'll find a way to spin this. They can try, but they did their spinning in Ohio. This is Wyoming, and here I'm the law. Hollister tipped his hat. You've got nothing to worry about, Mrs. Whitmore. I'll make sure of it. After the sheriff left, Clara stood on the porch and watched the sun rise over the snow-covered mountains. Her ribs ached, her head throbbed. But she was alive, and Elijah was alive, and Samuel was alive. And for the first time in 2 years, she felt something she had forgotten existed. Hope. Elijah came to stand beside her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered her one, and she took it gratefully. "Dusty's going to be fine," he said. Bullet grazed his arm. "He's already complaining about having to rest." "That sounds like Dusty." "Samuel's asleep. First time he's slept since all this started." Elijah paused, looking out at the white expanse before them. "He saved your life. My 9-year-old boy with a rifle he could barely lift. He's brave, like his father." "He's brave like you." Elijah turned to her, his gray eyes soft. "When I came through that door and saw you standing over Marcus, holding that little pistol, like you were ready to take on the whole world, I knew." "Knew what?" "That I was going to spend the rest of my life loving you. Whatever happened, wherever we ended up, I was going to love you until my last breath." Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. "I thought you were dead. When Marcus said his men had killed you, I thought—" "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just don't ever do that again." Elijah laughed a low, warm sound that chased away the last of the cold in Clara's bones. "I'll try my best, but I can't promise anything. Trouble seems to follow us. Then we'll face it together, whatever comes." He set down his coffee and took her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Marry me, Clara. Not someday. Not when the snow melts. Now. Today. I don't want to spend another day not being your husband." Clara looked into his eyes. This man who had given her everything, who had fought for her and bled for her and loved her when she didn't believe she was worthy of love. "Yes," she said. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." The wedding took place 3 days later in the small church at the edge of Elkhorn Springs. Reverend Thomas Blackwood stood at the altar, his deep voice filling the wooden sanctuary as he spoke words that had been spoken for centuries. Words that bound two souls together in the sight of God and man. Clara wore a simple dress that Ruth Dawson had altered overnight, working by candlelight until her fingers ached. It wasn't white, it wasn't fancy. But when Elijah saw her walking down that aisle, his breath caught in his throat like he was seeing the sunrise for the first time. Samuel stood beside his father, cleaned up and serious. His healing leg still wrapped, but strong enough now to bear his weight. He held the ring in his small fist, gripping it so tight his knuckles went white, terrified he might drop it and ruin everything. "Do you, Elijah James Cole, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." No hesitation, no doubt. "Do you, Clara Ann Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Clara looked at Elijah, at his gray eyes shining with unshed tears, at the man who had ridden through storms and faced down killers, and waited patiently while she learned to trust again. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by God and the territory of Wyoming, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Reverend Blackwood smiled, his weathered face creasing with genuine joy. "You may kiss your bride." Elijah cupped Clara's face in his calloused hands and kissed her softly, reverently, like she was something precious that might break. But Clara didn't break. She kissed him back with all the fierce hope that had been building in her chest, all the love she had been afraid to feel, all the future she had never believed she deserved. The small congregation erupted in applause. Ruth Dawson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Dusty whistled loud enough to rattle the windows. And Samuel threw himself at both of them, wrapping his arms around their waists and holding on like he never intended to let go. "Does this mean you're my mama now?" he asked Clara, his voice muffled against her dress. Clara knelt down, taking his face in her hands. "I can never replace your real mama, sweetheart. She loved you first, and she'll always be part of you. But if you'll have me, I'd be honored to be your mama from here on out." Samuel's eyes filled with tears. "I'd like that. I'd like that a lot." Clara pulled him close, and over his head she met Elijah's gaze. He was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite name. Wonder, maybe, or gratitude, or the simple, overwhelming joy of a man who had thought his chance at happiness had died and discovered he was wrong. The celebration afterward was small but warm. Ruth had organized food and drink at the boarding house. Neighbors Clara barely knew came to offer congratulations. Sheriff Hollister stopped by to report that Marcus Wade had been transported to the territorial prison to await trial, his men already confessing to avoid hanging. "You won't have to worry about him anymore," Hollister told Clara. "Or his family. I sent those telegrams I mentioned. Turns out the Ohio authorities have been looking into the Wade's business dealings for some time. Your case might be the thread that unravels the whole thing." Clara didn't know what to say. 2 years of running, of hiding, of believing she would never be free, and now it was ending. Not with a bang or a battle, but with a quiet word from a sheriff in a small Wyoming town. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me, ma'am. Thank that husband of yours, and that boy who wasn't afraid to pull a trigger when it counted." After the sheriff left, Clara found Elijah standing alone by the window, looking out at the snow-covered street. She slipped her hand into his, and he squeezed it without looking away from the glass. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking about Maggie." Clara felt a small twist in her chest. "What about her?" "I'm thinking she would have liked you. She always said I needed someone stubborn enough to stand up to me, smart enough to keep me honest, and gentle enough to love our son the way he deserves." He turned to her, his gray eyes soft. "She would have been happy about this. I know that sounds strange, a man talking about his dead wife on his wedding day. But I need you to know, Clara, this doesn't diminish what I had with her. It honors it." Clara lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to his knuckles. "I never wanted to replace her, Elijah. I just wanted to add to what you already had. To be part of your family, not a substitute for what you lost. You are part of it. You have been since the day you walked into my kitchen and saved my son's life." He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "I spent 4 years talking to a photograph, Clara, asking Maggie for permission to move on, for forgiveness, for wanting to be happy again. And then you came along, and I realized I didn't need permission. I just needed courage. And did you find it?" "I found you. Same thing." The first months of marriage were not easy. Clara had expected that. She had been alone too long, independent too long to simply slip into domestic life without friction. And Elijah, for all his patience, had been running his own household, his own way for 4 years. They bumped against each other in the kitchen, argued about how to discipline Samuel, disagreed about money and chores and 100 small things that married couples learn to navigate. But they also learned to apologize, to compromise, to laugh at themselves when their stubbornness got in the way of their happiness. Samuel flourished. His leg healed completely by spring, leaving only a small scar and a slight limp that the doctor said would fade with time. He took to calling Clara Mama, within weeks, the word slipping out naturally, and every time he said it, Clara's heart cracked open a little more. She started delivering babies again. Word spread through Elkhorn Springs and the surrounding ranches that there was a midwife at the Cole place, a woman with steady hands and gentle ways, who had saved the Cole boy's life. Women in labor sent their husbands to fetch her at all hours, and Clara went riding through snow and mud, and the first tentative warmth of spring to bring new life into the world. It felt like redemption. Every healthy baby she placed in a mother's arms, every crisis she navigated, every life she saved. It washed away a little more of the guilt she had carried since Daniel's death, the irrational belief that she could have done more, been more, saved him, if only she had tried harder. One night in early April, Clara came home from a difficult delivery, exhausted and drained. The baby had been breech, the labor long and dangerous, and for hours she had been convinced she would lose both mother and child. But she hadn't. She had fought, and the mother had fought, and in the end, a healthy boy had screamed his way into the world, while his father wept with relief. Elijah was waiting up for her coffee warming on the stove, a fire crackling in the hearth. "How did it go?" "They're both fine. It was close, but they're fine." He took her coat. Her bag guided her to a chair by the fire. He knelt beside her and took her hands, chafing them between his own to warm them. "You're shaking." "I know, it happens sometimes. After the hard ones." "You saved them." "I did my job." "Clara." He tilted her chin up, making her look at him. "You saved them. A mother and her baby are alive right now because you rode through the dark and did what you were trained to do. That's not just a job. That's a gift. Clara felt the tears come, the ones she had been holding back all night. I keep waiting for it to go wrong. For one to die on my table and prove that Marcus was right, that I'm not good enough, that I failed Daniel, and I'll fail everyone else too. And when it goes wrong, because someday it will. That's the nature of your work. I don't know. I don't know if I can survive it. Elijah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "When Maggie died, I wanted to die too. I stood over her grave and thought about putting a bullet in my own head just to make the pain stop. The only thing that kept me here was Samuel. The knowledge that he needed me, that I couldn't abandon him the way death had abandoned us." Clara stared at him. He had never told her this before. What I learned slowly over years is that survival isn't about never being broken. It's about getting up after you break. It's about letting the people who love you help carry the weight. He squeezed her hands. "You're not alone anymore, Clara. When the hard times come, and they will, you'll have me. You'll have Samuel. You'll have Ruth and Dusty and this whole community that's come to love you. We'll carry you until you can walk on your own again." Clara leaned forward and rested her head against his shoulder. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." She laughed, a watery sound that was half sob. "I love you, Elijah Cole." "I love you too, Clara Cole." It was the first time she had heard her new name spoken aloud. Clara Cole. It fit like it had always been waiting for her. Summer came hot and golden. Samuel turned 10 with a party that included every child within riding distance and a cake Ruth baked special for the occasion. He was growing tall now, shooting up like a weed, his body catching up to the courage that had always been inside him. Clara's garden flourished, tomatoes and beans and squash ripening in the sun. Flowers she had planted just because they were beautiful, because she finally had a home where beauty was allowed. And in July she missed her monthly bleeding. She didn't tell Elijah right away, didn't want to get his hopes up, didn't want to believe it herself until she was certain. But by August, when her clothes started fitting differently and the morning sickness began, she knew. She told him on a Sunday evening sitting on the porch as the sun set over the mountains. "I'm pregnant." Elijah went very still. "You're certain?" "As certain as a midwife can be." He turned to her, and in his eyes she saw something she had never seen before. Fear, yes, but also joy, so profound it seemed to glow from inside him. "I'm going to be a father again." "Yes." "And Samuel's going to be a brother." "Yes." He stood up abruptly, paced to the edge of the porch, turned back. His hands were shaking. "Last time, with Maggie, it killed her. The baby was turned wrong and the midwife couldn't fix it, and she bled out on that bed while I held her hand and begged God to save her." Clara rose and went to him. She took his trembling hands in hers. "I know, and I can't promise you nothing will go wrong. Childbirth is dangerous, it's always dangerous. But I know things that midwife didn't. I've delivered hundreds of babies, Elijah. I've saved mothers that everyone thought were lost. And if something happens to you, then you'll raise our children the way you raised Samuel, with love and strength and the memory of a woman who chose to be their mother." Elijah pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. She felt his tears hot against her scalp and held him while he cried out fear and hope and all the complicated emotions that came with loving someone so much it hurt. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "I can't." "Then don't. Stay beside me. Hold my hand. And trust that I know what I'm doing." He pulled back and looked at her, his gray eyes red-rimmed but resolute. "I trust you. I've trusted you since the day you walked into my life. Then trust this too. We're going to be fine. All of us." The baby came in early March on a night when snow fell soft and silent outside, and the fire burned warm inside. Clara labored for 12 hours. It was hard, harder than she expected being on this side of childbirth instead of the other. but Ruth was there following Clara's instructions with steady hands. And Elijah was there holding her through every contraction, letting her squeeze his hand until she feared she might break his bones. And when it was over, when the baby's cry filled the room, Clara looked down at the tiny perfect creature in her arms and understood something she had never understood before. This was why she had survived. The running, the hiding, the 2 years of believing she would never be safe again. All of it had led here to this moment, to this child, to this life she had never dared to imagine. "It's a girl," Ruth said, tears streaming down her face. "A perfect, healthy girl." Elijah leaned over Clara, looking at their daughter with wonder. "She has your eyes. She has your stubbornness. I can already tell." He laughed, a sound of pure joy. "What should we name her?" Clara thought about it. About all the names she could choose, all the meanings they could carry. "Margaret," she said finally, "after her grandmother, the woman who loved you first." Elijah's breath caught. "Clara. She should know where she comes from. She should know that love doesn't end with death, that families grow and change and carry their history forward." Clara looked up at her husband, at this man who had given her everything. "Is that all right? It's perfect. She's perfect. You're perfect." The door opened, and Samuel crept in, his face anxious. "Is it over? Can I see?" "Come here, sweetheart." Clara held out her arm, and Samuel climbed onto the bed beside her, peering at the baby with wide eyes. "She's so small. She'll grow." "Is she really my sister?" "She really is." Samuel reached out one tentative finger and touched the baby's cheek. Margaret's tiny hand came up, wrapping around his finger with surprising strength. "She's holding me," Samuel whispered. "Papa, look. She's holding me. She knows you're her big brother." Elijah put his hand on Samuel's shoulder. "It's your job to protect her, to teach her to love her. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." Samuel's voice was solemn, serious. "I'll be the best brother ever. I promise." Clara looked at her family gathered around her. Her husband strong and steady, his gray eyes shining with tears he didn't try to hide. Her son, because Samuel was her son now, in every way that mattered, already devoted to the sister he had just met. And her daughter, this new life that represented everything she had fought for, everything she had believed was lost. 15 years later, on a summer evening when the air smelled of wildflowers and the sky blazed orange with sunset, Clara Cole sat on her front porch and watched her family. Elijah was in the yard teaching Margaret to ride. At 15, she was fearless on horseback, pushing her father to let her go faster, jump higher, ride farther. She had Clara's dark hair and Elijah's gray eyes, and a spirit that belonged entirely to herself. Samuel, now 25, sat beside Clara on the porch. He had grown into a fine man, tall and steady like his father, with gentle hands and a healer's heart. He had trained with a doctor in Cheyenne and returned to Elkhorn Springs to practice medicine, following in the footsteps of 2 mothers who had taught him that saving lives was the highest calling. His wife Emily was inside preparing supper. They had been married 2 years now, and Emily was 6 months pregnant with their first child. Clara would deliver her grandchild, the circle continuing. "Mama," Samuel's voice broke into her thoughts. "You're smiling." "Am I?" "That smile you get when you're counting your blessings." "I suppose I am." Clara looked at her son, this man who had once been a frightened boy with a broken leg, who had saved her life with a rifle he could barely lift. "Do you remember the day I arrived in Elkhorn Springs? I remember getting kicked by that horse. I remember you saving my life. Do you remember what you said to me when I told you I was staying?" Samuel smiled. "I said it felt like how things were supposed to be." "You were right. It was. It is." Elijah came up on the porch, Margaret beside him, both of them dusty and laughing from their ride. He settled into the chair beside Clara and took her hand the way he had been taking it for 15 years, the way he would take it for however many years they had left. "What are you two talking about?" "The past," Clara said. "The future. All the things in between. That's a lot of ground to cover. We've got time. Margaret flopped down on the porch steps, still breathing hard from her ride. Papa says I'm ready to compete in the territorial races next month. Can I, Mama, please? We'll see. That means yes. That means we'll see. Margaret grinned, knowing she had already won. The sun sank below the horizon. The first stars appeared, and Clara Cole sat surrounded by the family she had built from nothing, from fear and grief, and the stubborn refusal to stop believing in love. She thought about the woman she had been when she stepped off that train. Broken. Running. Convinced she deserved nothing good because everyone she loved had been taken from her. She thought about Daniel, her first husband, who had taught her to heal and left her the tools to survive. She hoped wherever he was that he could see her now, that he knew his love had not been wasted. She thought about Marcus Wade still rotting in prison. His family's empire crumbled his hatred, consuming only himself in the end. And she thought about Elijah, her husband, her partner, her home. I love you, she said quietly, not caring who heard. Elijah squeezed her hand. I know. I love you too. I'm glad I got off that train. I'm glad you stayed. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder and closed her eyes. The sounds of her family surrounded her. Margaret's laughter, Samuel and Emily's quiet conversation, the horses settling in the barn, the wind in the grass. She had spent so many years believing she was unworthy of happiness, believing that love was something that got taken away, that good things never lasted, that she was destined to be alone. She had been wrong. Love was not something you earned. It was something you accepted, something you fought for, something you chose every single day, even when it was hard, even when you were scared, even when the whole world told you it was impossible. Clara Cole had chosen love. She had chosen to stay when everything in her screamed to run. She had chosen to fight when surrender would have been easier. She had chosen to believe that a broken woman and a wounded man and a motherless boy could become a family. And they had. The stars wheeled overhead. The fire crackled inside. And in a small ranch house in Wyoming Territory, a woman who had once believed she deserved nothing held everything in her arms. Some stories end with happily ever after. This one ended with something better. This one ended with happily ever after that had been earned, fought for, chosen, and that Clara knew made all the difference.